Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hi, it's me, Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T, the owner of this radio station. I invite everyone to listen, no matter if you're young, old, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, heck, I even want real estate agents listening to my station. Yes, even Rick and Tracy. You're all welcome. Now, it's back to my Goodwill ambassadors, Brad and John.
Mr. Inclusive. We call him our boss. That is Egbert. And, he did a little change of heart there. Matter of fact, I had a talk with him. John was like, Brad, there's no way you're going to be able to convince Egbert that he should be more inclusive. Right, John? That's what John said.
But you did. You did.
I was successful because
I think you're angling to replace me as official DEI chairman. And if you want to be co-chairman, Brad, all you got to do is ask, and we can take it to Egbert.
John, not to get sidetracked already because you gave me a sidetrack. Did you see this thing about what DeSantis did in Florida?
About what? No.
The DEI thing. They have.
What did he do?
Well, they've declared it illegal on all the college campuses. And
yeah.
University of Florida. They fired all the DEI people.
It's incredible.
They literally.
It's very Argentinian in its approach to getting rid of DEI.
Yes,
it's beautiful.
They fired them. Now they said they can reapply for another job, but there was like 18 of them. I'm going like, okay, no, hold on a minute now. How do you have? Hold on a minute. John, you still there? John disappeared for a minute.
I am here.
Okay. How do you have 18 DEI people? I just don't understand that. Okay.
Well, now, before I don't want to get a sidetrack, Brad, but the Columbia Missourian did a piece last week, and they were looking, and you could tell the tone of the piece was supposed to be, Republicans say there's DEI all over and it's nowhere. So they listed all the departments that have DEI officers and DEI programs, and our own beautiful state of Missouri, Brad, has some DEI going on in state agencies.
Well, hey, tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. Didn't the marijuana law, didn't that put in like a DEI person? Wasn't that crazy?
It did. And the great Eben Thampi and other people pointed that out and even suggested that was a little CRT-ish, but definitely DEI-ish, yeah. But, I mean, the price of admission, Brad, if you're going into an urban area, the price of admission to work with a lot of these minority leader types is to throw them a bone and say, look, you can have some jobs. We'll carve out some contracts. Your Auntie Clarice and your cousin Nene can get a contract because we'll make sure that 25% of people, have to have this kind of income and live in this zip code.
Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Okay. Right off the get-go, John gets me sidetracked. See, I'm very easily sidetracked.
That's what I like to do it, Brad. I like to push buttons.
Yeah, you do that. Do that well. Okay, right off the get-go, I'm going to bring in Casey, not for John, but for the radio station. Because Casey, I'm going to ask him, or he's going to tell me, Casey, how big of a story do you think this is?
In third place.
No, story's not in third place. Try again, Casey.
Up a notch to number 2.
No, this is not a number 2 issue. One more time, Casey.
The number one
news item this morning is we are now streaming.
Wow. Congratulations, Brad. That's fantastic.
Yes, we are now streaming. Well, for you as well, John, because not only can our show be heard live, but the radio station now is running 24/7 streaming. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of the national talk shows that we have on here, Armstrong and Getty, which runs 8 to noon. Then we have Eric Erickson, the founder of the Red State website. That is noon to 3, 3 to 6 in the afternoon. Mark Lee Van Camp and Robbins, a bunch of very conservative guys who are really, really funny and interesting. They're not running in the St. Louis area. So if you can't pick up our over-the-air signal on 104.5, on Egbert 104.5, you can now stream them. And all you have to do is either go to egbert.com, and there's matter of fact, if you take a look at that, John, tell me, Egbert put
I'm booting it up right now.
Egbert put that because he wanted some credit on this, so he gave me the little banner. Do you see the banner? You see it there?
I don't see a banner.
You don't see a banner. Scroll down.
I see the same format as
No, it's
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I see it. You got to scroll down, so it's not at the top of the page.
Not
But you
top
got
of
to
the
scroll
page,
down
right.
and
Scroll
click
down.
on
And see-
listen. Click on my nose to listen to Egbert 104.5 live. Wow, fan! And by the way, Brad, when I say congratulations, it's because for the first 2 weeks I annoyed the heck out of you, saying, "When are we going to have streaming? Do you need me to buy something to go streaming? What do we need to go streaming?" And then I just quit and I backed off. And so congratulations to you for getting me off your back about this.
Well, you see, it should have been done a long time ago, but unfortunately, we're a small operation here. Egbert doesn't have very loose purse strings, shall we say? And
I gotcha. And hey, when we're gonna I got just because I know folks are listening to this right now and will be listening to this via bjshow.co. When are we gonna have Friday's show up?
It's there.
It's not there.
Yeah, I put it up. Look at it.
Okay, I'm going right now. And when did you add it?
I'm not gonna say.
Okay, yeah, it was a few minutes ago. Okay,
No, I
so
did.
for everybody who texted me over the weekend who's listening to this now, I'm sorry there's not a link on johncombest.com because this was just added, but you can go to bjshow.co now and you can find Friday's show at popular request, and I held people off all weekend and said we'll get there. So it is up, folks.
It's there. I put it up last night. I did not have the best of week last week. Matter of fact,
We know, Brad.
I had a meltdown week last week, which just didn't stop and actually continued into the weekend. But that's a whole other crazy story. But you know what? What I have to do is I have to pick myself up, dust myself off, and move on forward because I am not a quitter, okay?
That's
and
right, Brad. I love it.
One thing to be said about me, there's a lot of bad things about me, but one of the positive things is, and part of the deal is that if you listen to this radio station, you'll hear some vignettes on here that I got approval for Egbert, and Egbert loves them by quite honestly. You hear these vignettes of quite honestly, some fascinating people. There's one on Sylvester Stallone, talks about all the downsides in his life and all the problems he had and how his wife left him and he had to sell his dog and blah, 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 blah. And now look at him. And there's a lot of them about very famous movie stars and television stars, not necessarily of the current generation, but people like James Garner, who was super popular. I mean, as a kid, I always loved James Garner. I thought he was the ultimate of cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
He's just one of those guys. To me, he's like a man's man. Now, maybe he was different off screen, but he just seemed like that kind of guy that if you were a dude or if you were a dudette and you had a problem and you went to James Garner, James, can you help me out? He would, hey, let me see what I can do for you. Or give you good talking to. Then another one is Charles Bronson. Another one is Lee Marvin. All incredible stories of how these guys, especially with Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson, were almost killed in World War II. Russell Johnson, there's one we run all the time, if you heard this one or not. Russell Johnson, the professor on Gilligan's Island, a World War II hero who was shot down in a B-25 Mitchell, bailed out into the ocean, hit the ocean so hard, broke both of his ankles. He dog paddled for 12 hours before he was rescued. And Dawn Wells, she's the pretty one from Gilligan's Island, talked about that he never, ever talked about this. He was a bona fide war hero. Charles Buczynski was Charles Bronson was shot. He was, I think, a gunner or a navigator, and literally was shot multiple times with machine gun fire from the Japanese from the ground. Almost bled to death in the plane. The co-pilot was killed outright. Never even talked about it. Like I've said.
Well, but that goes to show, Brad. I mean, a lot of people who have accomplished a lot don't feel a need to read their resume.
My father, World War II veteran, was in the Army for 40 years, retired when he was 62. After he passed away, we got the DD-214 to do the funeral, the whole bit. 3 Bronze Stars with Valor. He never talked about that. We never knew that. I still remember when my brother called me.
It's men of a bygone era, Brad. You don't see that you still see that on occasion, but not too often.
Not too often.
And an era now, a version of your dad today that did not have your dad's character or self-confidence would have that in this Instagram bio, Brad, and would remind people all the time that he had 3 Bronze Stars, and he would pose with them frequently.
Right. He would do the equivalent of the traffic stop. Do you know who I am? Right.
Yeah, he'd pull that out. No, but your dad wouldn't do that. Hey, let's get into the top 3.
Okay, you ready?
In third place,
We'll talk about a topic that everybody saw over the weekend, particularly the type of folks that listen to our show, the Missouri presidential caucuses. Brad, how many delegates do you think Nikki Haley got?
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting? I had of a source, and do you have the official St. Charles County stuff?
I know exactly how many delegates, yeah. We're not talking votes. We're talking about delegates.
Here's a breakdown of how the caucus voted. Congressional District 2 had 235 voters attend, 18 delegates available. Congressional District 3 had 558 voters attend, 47 delegates available, 65 total delegates. Former President Donald J. Trump received all 65 delegates to the Congressional Convention being held April 6th in St. Charles.
That's exactly right.
He won all
Nikki
of them.
Haley got, to quote the movie Animal House, 0.0.
And tomorrow, supposedly tomorrow's her last hurrah, because tomorrow is Super Tuesday, and they say that everybody's saying if she doesn't drop out tomorrow, there's something really wrong. I mean, but over the weekend, now it's interesting. One of my Democratic friends texted me over the weekend and said, "Well, she won D.C. Did you know? Did you know that?"
Yeah, she sure did. She sure won the swamp, and what a ringing endorsement that is.
Right. And I said, "Wow, did both Republicans in the District of Columbia vote for her? Was that wow? She did that? There were two of them, weren't there?"
There was some ballot harvesting. They voted for her. So to no one's surprise, Donald Trump swept the caucuses. Pretty much, from what I understand and from reading coverage across the state, very little of surprise happened. The most exciting thing, it seems, happened in Boone County, where the lines were way longer, I guess, than anticipated. And the folks in Boone County are on top of it, and they're they know the way the world works. And if they were surprised by a turnout, that says a lot about the number of people that just came up off the street, so to speak, and came out for Donald Trump. So to no one's surprise. And that leads us into number 2, Brad.
Well, by the way, before I hit the number 2 button here, let me say that I've got a couple interesting things to talk about with that. We'll do that in the next segment. But I do have audio from one of the St. Charles County caucuses where they were giving amendments suggested by, guess who? Bill Eigel.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, let's roll into number 2 then.
Up a notch to number 2.
Speaking of governor's candidates, today on my website, johncombest.com, you will find a link to a very special edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. Scott Fawn taped it before a Missouri Farm Bureau audience, and it features Missouri Farm Bureau President Garrett Hawkins talking a little bit about why the group endorsed Mike Kehoe's relationship with the farm community, with the group over the years. And Brad, I wanted to put that at the number 2 slot too, because you saw Bill Eigel also was front and center at the St. Charles caucuses. And, we had a lot of candidates throughout the state, as they should, standing up and saying, hey, we're here for Donald Trump and we're behind Donald Trump. Bob Onder did a great job over the weekend of posting from social media. Mary Elizabeth Coleman did the same. And, it's a good opportunity for Republicans to get out there and show that they're among the Trump supporters.
And finally,
the number 1.
A rare story that's quite serious, Brad, that has no sarcasm in it. A unique story was reported over the weekend by Greg Palermo. We mentioned Greg over the weekend, on Thursday or Friday's show. He writes for Spectrum Local News. So Spectrum, which is owned by Charter Communications, has their own news service, and Brad runs the shop here in the St. Louis area. He does a really good political notebook essentially every weekend, where he gathers the top happenings from around the state, an amalgamation, if you will, of stories. And he covered filing day, and he had a really intriguing story about the Democrats' Secretary of State race. Now, the Secretary of State race on the Republican side is going to be quite active. We have a number of viable candidates that are in that race, at least 3 really strong candidates in that race. But a gentleman named Gavin Bania, who is an alderman in the city of Glendale, or an elected official in the city of Glendale, wanted to file for Secretary of State. And when he showed up, apparently a Democrat member of the Missouri House named Barbara Pfeiffer, who represents the Kirkwood area, had already planned on filing. So this gentleman, Gavin Bania, as reported by Greg Palermo, said that he had a panic attack all the stress from filing day caused him to have a panic attack. He posted on social media a little bit about this Gavin gentleman posted about what he went through that day, what it was like to suffer a panic attack due to the stress of candidate filing, and stated in his social media post that he received death threats. Now, this is a pretty serious thing to suggest that one of your potential opponent or her supporters were issuing death threats because you decided to file for office. So uniquely, I went to this gentleman's social media page today, and I went to Greg Palermo's original reporting. It turns out the guy deleted the post the same day that I linked to Greg's post, which was on Saturday. On Saturday, I also called that fact out on Twitter because, it's a pretty serious thing to say that you're receiving death threats. Also, to raise awareness of men claiming panic attacks on filing day. So uniquely, the post has disappeared now. I linked to it on my website today. And so hopefully if this gentleman did receive death threats for attempting to file for Secretary of State of Missouri, he has turned them over to local authorities, and local authorities will be investigating this, because threatening to kill someone just because they're filing for Secretary of State seems like something that should be pursued.
Okay, I'm a little confused about that story. Was he upset because you mentioned a woman was there filing with him? Or?
Yeah, so Barbara Pfeiffer has a really good reputation. She's either a current or former pastor. I believe she's still a pastor. And she's a well-regarded state representative from the Kirkwood area. As you can imagine, being a Democrat from Kirkwood, she's very progressive. And this gentleman, so I think going into filing day, the Democrats, as I understand it, hadn't identified someone to take the loss in the Secretary of State's race. A Republican will win that election. But I guess this gentleman was under the impression that he would be the only one filing, and then was surprised to see Barbara Pfeiffer there filing. Now, again, it's hard to check. We'll have to go back and we'll have to look at, I'm sure a number of folks have screenshotted this gentleman's social media post where he claims to have received death threats. He did. I mean, he was very open about suggesting that the stress of filing caused him a panic attack. So hopefully someone has screenshotted this and can submit it to the authorities. I would say that it would be quite surprising if Barbara Pfeiffer or her supporters, quite frankly, would threaten someone with death for wanting to file for Secretary of State. That doesn't seem quite in the character of a Barbara Pfeiffer. I don't know her, but she certainly doesn't seem like someone that would threaten to kill someone for filing against her.
And what is this guy currently? He has some political office?
Yeah, I believe he is an alderman in the city of Glendale. Let me look it up real quick.
You know what he needs to do? He needs to get in his car and he needs to drive to Independence. And he needs to find out the home. I think it's a National Historic site where Harry Truman lived. And he needs to walk up to that place. And I believe if it was Harry Truman that made the quote, "If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen." Wasn't that a Harry Truman
I believe
quote?
That's his, yeah. Or perhaps Jussie Smollett and say, no, there was a noose around my neck. It totally happened. I can't tell from this if Gavin is no, it says, I believe he's a candidate. He is a candidate from Missouri Board of Aldermen.
No, Kirkwood Board. What you said, Missouri Board of Aldermen. Which Board of Aldermen?
Oh, I'm sorry, for Glendale, Missouri.
Man, I have to tell you what. If I can make my comment, if someone has a panic attack for filing for an office, and I don't think they know the rigors of running for office because of the fact that that's probably the easy part of running for office, wouldn't you say, John?
I would say, and by the way, and so I just looked this up. No, he is not an alderman in Glendale. He is running for Board of Aldermen in April 2024. Now, again, let's talk about the fact that these are very serious allegations, and we know that death threats are nothing to joke about. So I'm sure that.
Oh, I lost John. Are you back? I lost you there for a minute. You said, "I'm sure that," and that's the last I heard of you.
I'm sure that if this gentleman received these death threats from Barbara Pfeiffer and her supporters, I'm sure he'll turn them over to local authorities. I hope he does, because no one should feel like if they file for office that they're going to lose their life. It's not that serious.
Well, John, I know that you're the like the soothsayer and you have all this news, but I'm going to scoop you because you know who really issued the death threats?
Who's that?
It was Donald Trump. Donald Trump issued the death threats, and now
it probably was. You mean the criminal? You mean the man that's been indicted 417
right.
times?
And now he's going to be indicted in the state of Missouri because he issued a death threat against this dude.
He did. Yeah, it's totally believable.
That's
and it totally happened, Brad.
Okay, next break we'll play a little audio here. We'll have some fun, and I'm going to talk about 3 things throughout the store. Remember, I told you I'm going to do my top 3.
Oh yeah, I love this.
Okay.
This is great.
I'm just going to give 3 talking points. I'm going to talk about address either the segment B, which are coming up on segment C, $10 bills, Panera, and Austin. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
And this is the BJ Show. You can check us out at bjshow.co. And now you can stream. You can find the streaming link either on eggbert.com, that's EGGBURT.com, or on bjshow.co.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?